Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It sounds like Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers are going to get very active on the recruiting trail late in this 2025 class. We have not only an offensive line commitment to talk about, we also got a couple other names that I think Clemson fans should be really excited to monitor over the next couple of weeks. Now, we're going to run this recruitment or commitment episode a little bit different, right? The Clemson fans who've been rocking with the boys going back to the offseason as we cover these commitments, we normally talk about the player, dive into the film, and then talk about what the class looks like. We're still going to talk about Gavin Blanchard, who I think there's reason to be excited about this commitment, but I also want to have a conversation around, some other targets that I think Clemson fans should be dialed in with and kind of be monitoring over the next couple of weeks and really month heading up to National Signing Day. Really excited to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, to the Clemson fans, it's not only been a blast talking about this program in 2024 as they've been starting to hit their stride. I think it's going to be really fun to talk about this Clemson team on the recruiting trail as well over the next couple of weeks. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. And without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, let's start with Gavin Blanchard, right? Low 3-star, not necessarily a guy that's going to headline this Clemson 2025 class. That being said, I think two things stand out. One, I really like the fit with how Clemson's offensive line wants to operate. You dive into the film of Gavin Blanchard, he plays tackle at the high school level, certainly going to play on the inside of the offensive line when he gets to college. Two things he does really well. He down blocks really well. He pulls to the play side really well. What does Clemson like to do on the offensive line? Ask their offensive lineman to down block and pull to the play side. And so I think the fit makes a lot of sense. Now, is he the most technically proficient offensive lineman or the most gifted athletic offensive lineman that we see in 2025? No, probably not. And that's reflected in his recruiting ranking. But he's nasty. And we know Matt Luke likes his nasty. Matt Luke likes his offensive lineman nasty. And I think what you're getting at here is, look, Matt Luke's been around the block a lot in terms of evaluating offensive linemen, in terms of developing offensive linemen. If Matt Luke likes Gavin Blanchard and thinks that this is a guy that can come into this program, get developed into a potential starter for this program, I'm certainly not going to sit here in my basement arguing with Matt Luke's evaluation. This is a guy that I don't think will play a ton of football for Clemson during his first 2 years on campus. He's one of those players that you kind of want to tuck away and say, hey, what's he going to look like coming into year 3 or year 4? When you have the opportunity to get a potential starter on the offensive line on the high school recruiting trail, you have to capitalize because we don't see Clemson get active in the transfer portal, but more importantly, it's really hard to address the offensive line in the transfer portal. So the more these kind of bodies you can get at the high school ranks, the better. And I think Matt Luke and Dabo Swinney and this Clemson staff see kind of the developmental arc for a guy like Gavin Blanchard. And again, he shows some pretty good athleticism. He plays tackle at the high school ranks. He'll kick on the inside. He's a nasty dude. There are things to like about Gavin Blanchard, specifically in terms of the fit of what he can do and what Clemson asks their offensive linemen to do in terms of down blocking and pulling to the play side. Now, you look at the Clemson class in 2025, it's a small class, right? We're used to seeing Clemson have their class kind of full at this point in the recruiting cycle. Only 14 commitments. Now, it's still a top 20 class in the country. You have 4 commitments that are top 100 national dudes, but you still want to fill it out a little bit more. And I think the one position we're all taking a look at is the quarterback spot. A guy like Blake Hebert, who I was a really big fan of when he committed to Clemson. I continue to be a much bigger fan than what the recruiting ranking said of Blake Hebert. He flips his commitment from Clemson to Notre Dame. There's a quarterback that I certainly would keep my eyes on if I'm Clemson, a kid that I know relatively well, or really well. I'm a Michigan fan. Carter Smith was committed to Michigan for a year, decommitted from Michigan, I believe, on Wednesday night. And the decommitment is that I have no problems with Carter Smith decommitting from Michigan, where he was extremely low. He was really the face, one of the first commitments for Michigan in 2025. Did a lot of work recruiting other kids to Michigan as well. The reason Carter Smith is decommitting from Michigan is Michigan sounds to be going all in on 5-star quarterback Bryce Underwood in the 2025 class, which you can't really fault Carter Smith for. All right, I got to look for a different program. That's kind of the It's the era of recruiting that we're in. I think this would be a massive, massive opportunity for Clemson to pivot from Blake Hebert and go grab a guy like Carter Smith. Now, you look at Carter Smith, he is a more or less developmental prospect at the quarterback position. What I love most about this kid is he's an absolute gamer. You talk about dual threat quarterbacks, you talk about tough quarterbacks. That's Carter Smith. I think there's some development that needs to take place in terms of what he can do from the pocket. Can throw off platform. He's got a baseball background, so can throw off a lot of different arm angles and platforms. But most importantly, this kid is tough and he's a gamer. And that's something that I value at the quarterback spot. I think he's a winner. I really like him. And at the end of the day, it's hard when you lose a commitment at the quarterback position this late in the process. You normally kind of just get left kind of carrying an empty bag, if you will. Like, it's hard to flip quarterbacks late on in the process. You're not going to get many opportunities of uncommitted quarterbacks that are as good as Carter Smith. I one think he really fits the Clemson culture really well. I think more importantly, I think he's a really good quarterback. And Clemson has pivoted to Carter Smith. I think they were even checking in on him before he even decommitted from Michigan when Blake Hebert decommitted from Clemson. I would love to see Carter Smith wind up at Clemson. He's going to be one of my personal favorites. You know, I really liked him when he was committed to Michigan. I do not blame him one bit for decommitting to Michigan. I think from a culture standpoint and a mentality standpoint, he fits Clemson really dang well. I think he's a really good football player. And I think this is a massive opportunity for Clemson to, kind of turn a really crummy situation in terms of losing your quarterback that was committed for over a year to your program and you lose him late. I think he can turn around and get a really good quarterback, arguably a better quarterback in Carter Smith. So we'll see what Clemson can do. And again, I think Clemson, out of all, there's not a lot of, really elite teams that are looking for a quarterback right now. So I would put Clemson in the thick of it for Carter Smith. And if they want him, I would be surprised if Clemson can't wrap that one up. Next guy you got to monitor, Jordan Young, which has been a wild recruitment to follow. We thought he was going to Clemson in the summer. It sounded like he was going to go to NC State. This is another Michigan target that it sounds like Clemson is going to. It sounds like at where we stand right now, Clemson has the upper hand with. Really, really intriguing prospect that I think legitimately could play on both sides of the football. I think he'll play safety when he gets to Clemson or wherever he goes to play. He's committing on Saturday night. This would be a really, really nice win for Clemson to close out the 2025 class. And again, Clemson only has 14 commitments. They have some room in the class to go after some guys. I think we're going to see Clemson do exactly that. They're going to turn it up for Jordan Young. I think they're going to turn it up for Carter Smith. I think this could be a very exciting next couple weeks for Clemson, not only on the football field in 2024, but also in the 2025 class. Jordan Young, phenomenal athlete, some really good instincts at the defensive back. And because he plays both sides of the football, the ball skills are there. And we've seen Clemson really value defensive backs that can play the football in the air. Jordan Young is kind of that guy for Clemson. We'll see how it turns out. Wanted to hop on, update a little bit on the offensive line commitment, but I think more importantly, kind of update where Clemson's going in the 2025 cycle. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.